Well, the Dallas Cowboys are back on the practice field today at noon. Then it is off to the East Coast for the final game of the season as they take on the New York Giants this weekend. Joining us with a preview, as he's done all season long, is Locked On Cowboys podcast host Landon McCool. Landon, Happy New Year. So glad to have you here.
Glad to be here.
All right, so last game of the season. Before we get into the big picture stuff, let's start where we always do, with the injury report. Is there anything major we're watching this weekend?
Oh, there's all kinds of things in the injury report this week, right? It's week 18. It's a long week. It's a long end of the long season. And the list is very long. There's certainly a lot of names on it, including both starting running backs, Malik Davis and Javonte Williams. Both have been non-participants in practice so far this week. Savon Ravel has been dealing with a concussion neck situation. There's been a lot of kind of people just on the list for nicks and bruises that have been limited and full participants. But the Cowboys had 4 different do not participates throughout this week so far. The Giants have 8. And I think right now we're looking at about a 50% participation between both of these teams in practice this week. So it's anyone's guess on who's actually playing in this game.
Speaking of, here's what has a lot of us scratching our heads. The Cowboys are out of the playoff picture. There is nothing on the line, and yet both Dak Prescott and Coach Schottenheimer say Dak is going to play. Realistically, how much do you expect to see of him out there?
Not a ton, honestly. And I think it kind of points back to what I was just talking about. You know, if you don't have your starting 2 running backs out there, there's not a ton of trust that you're going to have guys out there who can protect Dak Prescott in blitz pickup situations. You've already got a little bit of a compromised offensive line. TJ Bass also didn't practice this week, so you may be looking at Brock Hoffman potentially starting at left guard. So I think Dak wants to get in there and say that he played, every single game this year after being injured last year. But I think the Cowboys need to be smart here to protect him, especially with the compromised offense. And on a field like MetLife Stadium where people have notoriously gotten injured, they need to be really smart in something, just to avoid disaster, make sure Dak doesn't get hurt.
Okay, so one of the biggest headlines this week is the team releasing Trayvon Diggs. What, if anything, does that mean for the Cowboys secondary?
Well, I mean, it's one less body, right? And the way that Trayvon played, frankly, these last few weeks, he wouldn't be missed too much. And I think that's part of the issue right now is that, look, there's obviously some off field and some personality stuff that's been going on between these, but on top of that, Trayvon hasn't played well this season, even when he's been on the field. Obviously, there's going to be more opportunity for some of these young guys to kind of prove what they've got for the Cowboys. Potentially for next year, you're going to see probably a lot of Kalen Carson. We might see Josh Butler, who's been off the roster this whole year with an injury. He's in his 21-day practice window. He may be activated. So I think right now it's a tryout situation for next year because this defense is likely going to be completely redone. And so folks are playing for their jobs or an opportunity to play for their jobs next season.
And as we both know, the defense has been under the microscope all season long. Is this potentially the last time we see Matt Eberflus calling the shots for this defense?
Yeah, certainly. It certainly could be. I mean, look, I think everybody understood the situation coming into the season. Obviously, he was put into a tough spot with the Micah Parsons trade happening so close to the beginning of the year. But even with that, kind of baked into the expectations, it's been really disappointing how bad this defense has been. And it doesn't feel like, despite the losses that they had in personnel, that the defense made the adjustments that they needed to kind of counteract that. So I think that there is a high likelihood, just based on the kind of body language and tone that we've heard coming out of the Cowboys front office, that this could be the last shot for Eberflus to kind of make an impression, because there is a chance that he won't be back next year.
And then before we let you go, are there any other storylines that we should have our eyes on as the Cowboys close out this season, especially facing the Giants, who have a different QB this time than the last time we saw them?
Yeah, I mean, look, like nobody wants to lose these games, but I think that the truth of the matter is that if the Cowboys, lose this game because of, who's depending on who's playing and all the different weird stuff that happens in Week 18s nowadays. If the Cowboys lose, it's going to make a pretty hefty weight on where they end up drafting, right? If the Cowboys lose, they could end up drafting right outside the top 10, maybe even 11 or 12, depending on how things line up with the wins and losses around them. And if they win the game, they could draft that pick could turn all the way down to 18. So a lot on the line in kind of a negative way for the Cowboys. But it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. It's always very interesting to see how Week 18s play out. They're like a glorified preseason game sometimes with who is playing and who isn't playing.
Well, Landon, we're excited for it. Thank you, as always, for joining us and breaking things down. And again, don't miss Landon's daily podcast, Locked on Cowboys. We've got the newest episode today at 1 p.m. over on our streaming app, WFAA+. Also, don't forget to join us Monday for our final call-in show of the season, where we'll not only recap the Cowboys-Giant game, but also look at what's needed in the offseason. That's Monday at 11:30 right here on WFAA after midday.